All right. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you are having a great day. I am looking to bring a little thought. I have a little bit of a thought. I think I told you guys most of the time that I usually start with a lot of different verses, and usually one or two pops in and it kind of sticks around a little bit. And I should have clapped. Anyways, I hope everybody's doing well. It is February 12th. It's been raining for a few days. It's kind of miserable. The workday is done, and I had a couple minutes, and I thought I would run through something that kind of stuck with me a little bit today. And my thinking is just to kind of give you a setup here, this devotion. And this devotion is going to come from Luke 12:20. All right. The word of God says, "But God saith unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then who shall those things be which thou hast provided?" I mean, right out of the gate, that sticks, doesn't it? You fool. You got God calling you a fool. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, if you've been in this business, I've been doing this since 2014, and you always get a few trolls, you get a few people that want to cause a fight, they want to stick their nose in, and they want to get a rise out of you. One of my videos I did, I talked a little bit about Josephus, and here it is right here. Let's see if you can see that. That's kind of a nice little read. That's one of the books that I'm working through. The Jewish study Bible as well, because it gives me some other color to the events that happened back then. But anyways, this person certainly shows the traits of a atheist. Just simply the way he talks. He's like, well, Josephus didn't do this, and Josephus didn't do this. Well, Josephus said, James, Jesus' brother, who didn't believe it till he was what? Resurrected, was very vocal about James, Jesus' brother. He knew who he was and talked much about the temple of him being in there and with James. So, and James talked about the things that Jesus did while he was here. And that's just one pin scratch. There's antiquities. There's some of the Jewish war. Does he come out and clearly, overtly state, all these things? No, but there's a lot of color in his writings, especially with the temple in AD being destroyed. I think it was destroyed again, I think, 25, 35, whatever. Anyways, point being is the guy definitely gets on my nerves. I try to be as patient. I think he's a repeat, so that's the reason why I was a little aggressive towards him. And basically, anybody that is going to question something, it's your responsibility to provide the information, not throw darts. And this is what this guy does. I provided actual pages, paragraphs, and links on everything I said. And that's one thing that I don't do well with when somebody calls me a liar. I struggle with that. Because that's one thing I am not. Now, I could be misguided. I may be missing something, but I'm not a liar. And that's called an unintentional thing. And I don't claim to know everything. And certainly not going to stick any holes in it. So anyways, let's just get through it. So 13. I'm going to read 13 through 21. I quoted the very first one, but I wanted to walk through this one, and we're going to talk about a couple things. So this is what I would call, it's a fatal embrace, unmasking the rich fool. Well, I hate to be called fool by God, but this gentleman was, or I don't know his status. But anyways, verse 13, and one of the company said unto him, Master, speak to my brother, that he divide his inheritance with me. In other words, hey, there's more than one in the family, probably two brothers, one older, one younger. Typically, Jewish culture is the older gets the portions, which are double portions. And so he's saying that he should divide his shares with him. And he said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? This is Jesus talking in 14. He said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of things which he possesses. So it's not what you have. Verse 16, and he spake unto the parable unto him, or unto them, saying the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. So this rich man was provided and received plenty. And he thought within himself, saying, "What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruit." So he had so much he didn't know where to put it. And I think of, and he goes on to say, and he said, "This will I do. I will pull down my barns. I will build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods." So he's going to tear down his old barns and build bigger ones. And I will say to my soul, this is him telling himself, "Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine easy, eat, drink, and be merry." So in other words, relax. You got plenty in the bank. And God said unto him, "Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided?" So who's going to get them when you're gone? And I was going to say, one of the things I was going to say is, we come in this world, we leave with nothing, and whatever you think you have, it's going to go to somebody else. So is he that layeth up the treasure for himself and is not rich towards God? So he's very clear here. And what he's talking about, he's setting the setting was for Jesus to give a judicial decision. This parable of the rich, not my words, Jesus, the man of wealth, and what should he do, and what in wealth, and what he should do. So, or should he fear? What should he fear if he's got all his wealth? I know a lot of people like that. I was one of them. Plenty in the bank, and I could probably talk about this verse right here. Take thine ease, or take it easy. Eat. I went to the finest restaurants, had the best food. Drink. I had the best single malt scotch money could buy. I would ship it in from overseas, and then be merry. And I felt that I had it all under control because I had my riches. Nothing new under the sun, as Solomon would say, and Ecclesiastes. So here we are in Luke, first century, and he's talking about what this guy wanted. He wanted Jesus to be the judicial one, the one to settle the argument between his brother. And wealth, this guy wanted his brother's inheritance, simply put. Jesus sternly refused to render a verdict. Excuse me. He didn't want, he didn't want to get in the middle of that. And because he already knew the outcome of that, what it was going to look like. The wealthy, I think, should fear life. They should to me, I think the wealthy should fear this. They should fear life does not consist of things. The warning against greed means watch out, beware. The big I. You hear it in this little passage 6 times. And in verse 16 through 19, aggressively uses self-centered. You can see it in the language. That's a big mistake. Indulgence or extravagant living. I was there. That was me. Now, I wasn't Elon Musk rich or anybody else, but I had plenty of money. That's why money doesn't really motivate me today. When Jesus got a hold of my heart in 2017 and started working on me until, 2016 started. 2017, he got a hold of me and said, "You are coming back to me." And I've been there ever since. So the wealthy should fear this. A man's life may be required and demanded tonight. How many people will lay their head down on their pillow tonight and not wake up tomorrow morning? Remember what I tell you. You want to know him before you meet him. And if you say, "Oh, I'm in great shape. I run 15 miles. I'm Elon Musk rich. I've got the biggest house, biggest car, and all those things." I would say that this passage would say that your life may be required and demanded tonight. Because that's what he says in verse 20 to this rich guy. So the rich guy is taken that night. So the wealthy also should fear that wealth is not a permanent possession. Somebody else is going to get your money. I think of this, and I'm being honest with you. I'm not trying to be I'm not bragging, and I'm being very humble here, but I'm also trying to get a message, and I'm trying to get principles and points across to you. I've been investing since 1992. And I sat down with my investor probably about 2.5 years ago. Now, probably 3 or 4. And he told me, "Will you go buy something? Because you're going to give it away." I think of this verse here or this passage that somebody else is going to get you something, which is okay. I mean, I've got grandchildren, children, and that I've already their college. There's four grandkids. Gina and I were making sure the colleges will be taken care of for all four. And should anything happen to me, obviously Gina will be well taken care of. If something happens to both of us, our girls will be taken care of, Lord willing. So I just think of this fatal mistake that he's making. And this immense wealth is often what people think is self-sufficient. They think that there are some things that he needs to fear, though. The setting was basically Jesus to give a judicial decision. The wealthy should also fear that life doesn't consist of our things, as I said earlier. We could be taken at any moment, and it's not permanent. You're going to give it away. So the world will tell you, come on, let's turn on the TV. Has anybody looked at a commercial? Ever heard the words, you deserve it? Go buy it. You deserve it. Whether you got the money or not. If you don't have the money, you don't deserve it. You may want it. It becomes a want or a need. A want or a need. I want this. I don't have the money. Bible tells me to be a good steward of my money, but that commercial just told me that I deserve it. So I don't care what it costs me. There's people like that. I was at the dealer one day and I asked the guy, the Ford Raptor, I bought a brand new truck, my first and only truck of my entire life, brand new. I had never bought anything ever for myself. And I said, well, I didn't deserve it. My truck broke down. Let me just say that. I'd be still driving my old vehicle right now, but it didn't make sense to try to repair it. So I went and bought it, and I was like, are you kidding me? How do people buy these things? And he says it happens every day. And I'm like, man, they must make pretty good money. They must be like lawyers and doctors, right? And then I was looking at one of the Ford Raptors, and I think that's like $100,000 or so. And I was talking about that. And I was like, well, who buys these, $100,000 vehicles? And you know what he said to me? He says the realtors come in and pay cash. If you ever gone through Facebook and see how many realtors are out there, I guarantee you, I can name 50 right now in this county that I know. And I could probably name, maybe 5 to 8 in this neighborhood I live in. And don't get me wrong, you're moving, you need a realtor. Realtor can help you out, and they can do some great things. And they have a place, and I'm not taking that away from any of the realtors. So there's people that need a realtor. I needed a realtor when I only had 15 days to find a home, and I went somewhere I didn't know. So same with the military, when they go to a new duty station. So realtors, I'm not saying they're bad, but if you think about it, if they're getting 3, 4, whatever percent, and you see the price of houses now, you don't have to be crazy to understand that they make a pretty good penny at closing. And I made a lot of money at closing. And of course, that gets split through the realtor and the fees and all the other stuff and the gas and the time and the research and the MLS, the ability to study and all that stuff. There's so many things that tie to that. I'm just saying, point blank, just looking at it from how much money they get. And, and they do, like I said, a lot of them pay cash for these brand new vehicles because they take their customers around and they want to have a nice vehicle. The aesthetics, and I get it. That's the world. That's the world we live in. Well, the world will tell you need a new car. The world will tell you need a new house. I know people that went out and bought houses couldn't afford the house. They were house poor. Their house was beautiful, house poor. And I know because I spent 10 years as a vice president of the homeowners association in this subdivision. People walked away from their loans. Couldn't pay it anymore. It was cheaper for them to go get an apartment or go rent somewhere than it was to stay in that beautiful house they had. I'm sure that took a lot of humbleness, but they overextended themselves and they weren't good stewards of the money. But anyways, this is not the message I'm talking about. Mine is more about the wealth and putting our faith in wealth is just not a good thing. And it's the materialism things that I'm talking about. This guy wanted his brother's inheritance. Who doesn't want money? Think about it. Everybody in this world wants money. Now, let me say this. Money is a resource. You need resources to live here on this planet. So don't misunderstand me when I say about the resources. You need them. So but this guy wanted his inheritance. It was a large amount, whatever it is. And typically, the Hebrew culture, through the test of time, you think of Jacob and Esau, right? Esau had the rights. He had the double portion. He sold them to Jacob. And kind of underhandedly there, but that is how it works. The oldest, the parable of the wayward child that goes out and spends his inheritance, and he comes back. And what we learn in the parable is the one that stayed is the brother was mad. He was mad. He went to his father and said, "Look, I've been with you from day one." He comes back after you gave him all this money and you slaughter the fatted calf. You did all this stuff. And the point, principle, or precept to that is that his father was going to give him not only the double portion, but much more of all he has. And this son had already got what he was going to get. But he couldn't see that. All he saw was, look what you're doing to this, the younger one, and he's not amounted to anything. There's certainly some issues there. Anyways, so the world's going to tell you, you need it. You need it. You need to go get it. In this case, we're talking about it's common practice in the rabbis to settle legal debates. It goes all the way back to Moses. I call it the first Supreme Court of the Old Testament. And if you think about it, what did his father-in-law tell Moses? You're going to wear yourself out. What you do is not a good thing. He's sitting there trying to, there was 2 million people and there's lots of problems. He was trying to solve every one of them. And basically, his father-in-law taught him, and through the Lord, he went out and he put judges to help with that. And then the ones that couldn't be solved, he took care of. He was like the Supreme Court. That's why I call Moses the Supreme Court of the law that was given 1600 back, almost 3,500 years ago. So they wanted Jesus. Rabbis usually come in. That's why they went to the temple and they try to settle things. What he was asking was pretty significant. And Jesus knew well enough when he approached him that's a matter in the midst of a huge crowd. So lots of times people shoot darts and things with crowds around. And Jesus knew exactly what he was up to. And what he was asking was pretty significant, and he wanted wealth. He wanted money. He wanted property. That's what he was after, his other brother. And he was looking for Jesus to give him help to be able to do that. And he, in his mind, probably thought he was stolen from him. More likely, the property was rightfully his anyways. Who knows? But the act of justice is to be straightened out in the inheritance. So that's why you ever get with a lawyer after someone passes and they read the will with everybody there. So everybody is witnessing what's written in the document. That's the reason why you have the reading of the will, because there may be an inheritance. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. So this guy definitely had a flawed spiritual life. We know that. Listening to the word being preached does not mean that we hear the word. We say it again. Listening to the word being preached does not mean that we hear the word, nor that we learn from it. The word, salvation, spiritual maturity do not rub off on a wandering mind, especially in a worldly life. Okay? I want you to think about it. That's just a thought there. Contrast to the mind and the attitude. You think about the man and Jesus and how significant this was. The man's mind was set on the things of this world. He wanted that inheritance. He wanted that property. He wanted the money. He wanted the wealth. He wanted the selfishness. Okay, here he goes. Ready? He's raising his hand. Who can identify with that? Dean Ali can identify with that. Okay, I admit that. Okay, many years ago, I would never admit that. I used to hang out with people that would say, I wonder what the poor people are doing tonight. Literally, people that I hung out with, that's what they would say. I wonder what the poor people are doing tonight, And so the Lord's mind was set on the higher part and more of a noble, and it was really about salvation in life. And if you think about it, when he's giving this parable, it's like you should focus on your future in heaven, not here. Your focus should be on heaven and the eternal. A lot of people don't want to do that. They want to focus exactly on the things that make them happy, right? That's why, because we're human. That's why. And so the mission for Jesus in this parable was to give this was not to give the property to the man that was asking for it from his brother, but to give the man life, more of an abundant and an eternal. Property is nothing if you don't have life. You got to have life first. So when I think about fear, the worldliness, selfishness, and indulgent, life does not consist in these things. And let's look at a couple things. The charge of Jesus was strong. There was a double warning here. He said, take heed, beware. The warning was given, close attention. Beware means to guard oneself from the enemy. beware. The other things, the big sin is covetousness. And, that's just another example of the man. He thought his happiness and comfort, soul and body do not depend on what he has, but many of poor people are happy and more comfortable. If you haven't met somebody that didn't really have anything and they're really happy, it's because they probably have Jesus, or they probably are happy. Unless you're Joel Osteen, as my father-in-law, Ellie Boy, would say, does he ever have a bad date? He's always smiling. But anyway, so beautiful home, the latest clothes, a new car, your property or money or wealth, that's not the answer. The big I. You see this in the covetousness and the aggressive self-centeredness in his message here. Jesus gets the facts of the man from the covetous right away. He shares the parable of the man who was aggressively self-centered. So in short, the verses were describing his thoughts. The rich man in the parable, I 6 times, my 5 times, and the man's attention solely was on himself. This parable, the man was blessed materially, and he had tremendous blessings from God, and he did not thank God for his blessings. Do you thank God for your blessings today? You think I'm weird, but every time I see my truck, I always thank God. Because if he give it, he can take it. And to me, he provided that for me, and trust me, I needed the truck. It wasn't I wanted the truck. I needed the truck. So that hopefully is my last purchase. The man called the fruits of the ground and the possession. My fruit, my goods. We saw that in 17 and 18. The man called his soul, my soul. This is an indicator that he had given his soul to God. There was no indication he was giving his soul to God, but he was taking control of it. How many people you know that are so boisterous, loud, and make statements and affirmations and say, I'm not doing that, or this is the way it's going to be, or whatever the situation is, and they make these statements? You got to be careful what you say. Be careful. Be careful about your pledges or your statements. The Bible talks about you let your yea be yea, your nay be nay. That means your yes is being yes and a no being no. Notice there's no middle there. So you'll be accountable for your words. You got to be careful sometimes on how you this guy. He obviously wasn't being careful. He was talking about him. So he was puffed up. He was so prideful with what he'd done. He began to think bigger and better, to focus on what? Himself, my and mine. Remember, he's going to tear down those barns and build bigger ones. He was thinking about himself, how he could benefit. Another big mistake is the selfishness and the indulgence that is extravagant living. The sole purpose of this man was to be easy or take it easy, have plenty to eat and drink and enjoy life and do what he wants and be and wishes. When I think about even just the basic things that the Bible teaches, I think of Adam and Eve when he put him in the garden and he had him work and he had him tend the garden. And I think of Cain and Abel, and I think of the curse where a man will work off the sweat of his brow, but he's never going to get, the things that he's looking for in the ground, especially Cain. Cain had, he worked his whole life and he was never going to get anywhere. I think of people that have companies and they work themselves to death to be able to say, you're killing yourself. Common sense, you got to look at it a little bit more. So do you want to be easy? Do you want the comfort and ease and extravagant living? He gave no thought to helping other people. He wasn't even thinking about it. He forgot that there's needy people in this world. There's needy people in this world. Now, I am so glad that we are looking at our finances as a holistic approach, a macro approach to the government on what we're spending. And the onion is getting peeled back and it's starting to really stink. And we're starting to see it. And I'm not going to say point fingers. I'm just saying some of that stuff is true. Come on. You can't sit there. You sit and listen to people in the congressional offices complaining about Elon Musk and Trump and all this other stuff. And then you go look and their names on the tape. They're millionaires. How do you become a millionaire in the Congress? You already have a lifelong check. You already have your salary. You already have benefits. You got everything. You're exempt from everything because you're a congressman or a congresswoman. And a lot of them take, money for themselves. And you see people getting caught. I just took an ethics class for the government. I work for the United States government. And I just took an ethics class. And it was full of beware and a bunch of don't do's. And I remember finishing it this morning. And I thought about it for a minute. And I was like, how many people in Washington, D.C. taking this course? I know I have to. and I have to adhere to it. They even want to know what I invest in. They want to know where's my money. They want to know I'm not tied to a foreign dignity or something. So I have to disclose all that at my little teeny level that I'm at. That's why it burns me when these people up in Washington don't have to follow the rules, and it's just not fair. Anyway, so let's talk about some things here. So, he put off living, he enjoyed life, he got his barns built, and the whole idea, he was a workaholic. I love my baby brother, but he's a workaholic. He is a spitting image of my father. My father was very much stressed out, very much under pressure. Everybody wanted his time. Everybody wanted him to do their job and their work right then. And you always had staffing issues. Most people don't want to work three quarters of the year. It's hard to find good help. It's been like that since he started the business way back in the 80s and 90s. And I know my brother, he has examples of that now. And he has to do a lot of this work. And I pray that he gets it in a place somebody can help him and he can get away from working himself to death. But workaholics, this is what this guy was doing in his spare. And building bigger barns, making more stuff, more money. Note the shocking point. He only thought of these things. He never did them. They were only thoughts in his heart. I think of Deuteronomy 11 through 14. And beware that thou forget not thy Lord in not keeping his commandments. So number one, obey God. Listen to what he's saying. And his judgments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, it's God talking, lest when thou hast eaten and art full, how many people pray for their meal? Be thankful. It's a nourishment, physical. And hast built godly houses, dwelt within them, and when their herds and their flocks multiply, or your substance in your life, you may not have flocks of today. Back then, that's how you would be recognized with somebody with wealth, with lots of herds and flocks and stocks and all that stuff of animals. And it goes on to say here that, and thy silver and thy gold is multiplied. You have plenty of money. And all that thou hast is multiplied, then thy heart is lifted, and thou forget the Lord thy God, and you forget the Lord thy God. Then in your heart be lifted, and you forget the Lord thy God. He's lifting us. Beware. This is a warning. First word, beware. He's more telling us, when you have reached Maslow's hierarchy of thinking, the stages of life in psychology, Maslow goes on to say, once you reach that, you die. You've accomplished everything you want to do. So the other point I was making about working, let me go back to working. I just thought of it. I remember I lost my job, got a severance, all that other stuff, and it was, more political than anything. Certainly it wasn't performance, because I asked that. I said, was there a performance issue or something I didn't do? No. It was our business strategy, bring in the best, take care of what we had to do, and then we were going to let them go. And I didn't see it, because I was doing it because of myself and money. When you start, I had quite a bit of time off. I can tell you, by the second week, I was going nuts. By the third, I was really going nuts. So you have to learn. So when you get to that level of maybe retirement, if you're able to, you have to be disciplined even in retirement. You have to set boundaries and do things that have goals. And if you don't, and you just, I was in between jobs. I mean, I did every to-do list there was made to man. And in and around the house and on the vehicle, I run out of stuff to do. So we have to work. We're commanded to work. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing because it helps you. Now, I'm saying this because I think too many people are workaholics. I was a workaholic. I was looking for more. Proverbs 21:13, who stoppeth his ears at cry of the poor, he shall cry himself, but shall not be heard. He that giveth to the poor shall not lack, but he that hideth his eyes shall have many a curse. So giving to people that need it. Covetousness, which the Greek word is pleonexia, and I'm studying Greek and Hebrew. I'm not throwing out words to look smart. Trust me. I'm just trying to understand words because there's different meanings to certain words in Bible verses. So I'm doing it for edification. Covetousness, that's craving something, desiring more. I think of John D. Rockefeller. You've heard me say this before. Johnny Rockefeller was the oil tycoon of the early 1800s. He had railroad. He was the tycoon. He owned all the oil, and he had plenty of money. And I remember reading something where they asked him when he was near his deathbed. They said to him, they said, "Mr. Rockefeller, how much is enough?" And he said, "One more dollar." Are you looking for one more dollar? That's where he identified himself with. So that's greed. That's going to bring dissatisfaction. You're always going to want more. You're going to keep craving things. You're going to keep craving a fleshly indulgence. Who doesn't get excited when Amazon comes to the door? Most people do. So in this case, this guy definitely had some lust, and it was deep. It was deep within him. No man can serve two masters, right? He's either going to hate one or he's going to love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. And this is in Matthew 6:24. It says, "Ye cannot serve God and mammon," mammon being money. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? We get older, our bodies, take a hit, right? And it gets difficult. You slow down a little bit, you're not as bigger, but you still feel like you're about 25 or 30. You ever ask somebody that's in their 90s how they feel? They feel like a teenager. You're still sharp. I mean, if you're lucky to be, if you live that long. But our body ages, but our minds, when we get close, as it says in the Bible, it's the point of wants to die. People don't want to die. I see it all the time. I'm a check blocker. I see people on their deathbed all the time. They don't want to die. Those are things that you got to put, if you have this whole world and you are a workaholic and you can identify yourself with your checkbook and your bank accounts and how many trips to Aspen and, maybe your private jet or whatever. I'm just spitballing here, but you lose your soul. I heard a story once, and some of the folks watching this may know this. Steve Phelps, he owned a seafood restaurant, or not restaurant, but a seafood house. And he bought seafood from the local waterman. He would sell it, and that's how he made his living. And he got cancer, and he went to the doctor. He told the doctor, he said, "Doctor, I will give you $1 million right now if you can cure my cancer." The doctor says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Phelps, there's nothing I can do." There's certain things that are truths that you can't change. That's why I always struggle with people that say, "I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a this, I identify this." I'm like, there's certain truths you just can't change. In this case, this man had cancer. He didn't want to die. He was willing to give $1 million. I meet people all the time. Are you going to be prepared? What will you give in exchange for your soul? Mr. Phelps was going to give $1 million just to live longer. So for many walk, as whom I told you often, and now you even weeping, that they are enemies of the cross, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, talking about their substance, and whose glory is in their shame, whose mind is earthly things. My wife always tells me, and I chuckle, she's like, "You don't want to be too high-minded, your mind can't be too heavenly to be earthly minded." That is nowhere in the Bible. It's actually the word. It's it. Yeah, you are not to be worldly, but be more heavenly minded, is what this verse is telling you in Philippians. So we brought nothing into this world, right? 1 Timothy. And we know that we can't carry anything out. You have to think about that. I don't like to talk about it either. Do I want to sit and talk about retirement and being put on the shelf, not being needed anymore? That's what happens, especially men in families. When their kids grow up and they leave home and the empty nest stuff, you are no longer a significant factor to provide. They're doing it on their own, but you want them to. Your whole job as a parent is to teach them to be mature enough to take care of themselves and teach them at a young age all the way up. I learned how to work hard, and it helped me out. And I went overboard, but it helped me out. So, it's important that we teach our kids that, but you become less useful, and it hurts. My daughter told me the other day that I guess there was a promotion or something. And they asked her about it. She said, "Well, I'm going to take the weekend and think about it. I'm going to pray about it and talk to my husband about it." And she said, "Then I'm going to talk to my dad." Man, that made me feel good. That means this very smart, intelligent, doctoral person values what her dad says enough to tell her senior leadership at the Centera Health Care place. It made me feel good. So charge them that are rich in this world, that they not be high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God. That's what you should focus on. Who giveth us richly to all to enjoy. But we see a lot, for men shall, and that's 1 Timothy 6:17. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetousness, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankfulness, and unholy. 2 Timothy 3:12. And Proverbs, I'll say this: he that oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he is given to the rich, shall surely come to want. You're stealing from the poor, or you're stealing in jet. That's a bad thing. And I like what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes: he that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver. He that loveth abundance with an increase, this is also vanity. All right, let's talk about the death, the fear, and the judgment part. This is the part where you're a fool, right? So God's speaking to him in this sense right now. Should be home in a minute. It's God who knew the thoughts of this man. It was God who knew this man that was going to die that very night. He died that night. The man did not know it, nor did anyone else know, but God did. The man would die, and everybody has his night to die. And this was his night. So we'll all have that day. A man's soul was required, and God required and demanded it. The existence was not over for the man. The man's soul was simply to be in another world, about the truth. He was about to be there because of the situation. And there's a good possibility he might have lived longer had he been more obedient. But at the end of things, 1 Peter 4:7, all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. You should pray every morning, every night, throughout the day. Close your eyes and you don't know if you're going to open them again. Raging waves of sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering star, to whom the wicked is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. But the fearful and unbelieving and abominable, and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers, idolaters, and liars shall have their part in the lake of fire and which burn with fire and brimstone. And they call this the second death. So keep that in mind. Spiritual dimensions. It's all about. All right. So let me just run through a couple more things. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Certainly, it's a stark picture of this man. I think of his prison of self-centeredness. A bird is trapped in a guided or gilded cage, surrounded by glitter and treasures. The rich fool's monologue is a symphony of I and mine, even for 11 times. So we see this throughout his language. He's built a prison of himself, and he is only concerned with his current comforts. Like Satan, who declares, I will be more like the Most High. The rich fool has placed himself at the center of the universe. That's Satan. Satan was like, that's why he was casting out. The biggest things God hates. So this self-centered individual, it isn't just unattractive, right? But it's the spiritual death of his sentence and severe severing him from the true life. The other thing, too, to point out here is the illusion of ownership. Sometimes we have this illusion. Sometimes we can't say it. I would say this. I would think people that love me, and I would say this: if you love me and you knew I was doing something wrong, would you love me enough to tell me? Well, it's the same way with somebody's salvation. It's the exact same thing. I love you so much, I'm going to tell you. I get people all the time. I had one this week. Can we change the subject? I don't want to talk about it. What does that tell you? There's an accountability issue. There's an acceptance issue that they don't want to accept because they're stuck in the rich man's focus. So he was just as much on misunderstanding. He speaks of my crops, my bonds, my goods. How many people stand around their houses? My car, my wallet, my bank, my. It's my money. How many times do you hear that? But that is the truth. We're stewards of God's entrusted us of what he gives us. The rich man, or the rich fool in this case, his possessions were not his own to hoard. They were a gift meant to be used for God's glory and benefit of others. When much is given, much is required. He clung to them which were desperate and gripped the failing to recognize that it was ripping to recognize really what the true riches were. Why not what we possess, but in what we give away? I think of the sudden summons. Think of a dark, think of it being dark, silent door appearing in a wall of laden riches. The most chilling line in the parable is when he pronounces, "This night your soul will be required of you." It's a stark reminder, a warning. It's of the fleeting nature of life and the uncertainties. The rich fool was so occupied or preoccupied of his riches, and he neglected the most important thing. That was his relationship with God. How's your relationship today? Is it healthy, or does it need some help? He was unprepared for the ultimate accounting, which was coming, which was his life. His riches could not buy one more breath, similar to the Mr. Phelps, the gentleman that owned the seafood house. I would say this: the parable of the rich fool is a timeless warning. It's against the seductive power of self-centeredness. It's a deception, and it allures material possessions. Don't put your faith, hope, and trust in material things. It challenges us to examine our hearts. This is what it's done. This message, devotion, is to challenge your heart and ask, where do I place my trust? Am I building a life on shifting sands of worldly wealth, or is it solid rock on the relationship of God? Let us learn from the rich man's tragic end and choose life, folks. Humility, generosity, and devotion to the one who is truly. That's what I would say. Folks, Chaplain Dean Alley, I just wanted to take a few minutes. I know this went a little long, but I hope it was a blessing to you. It was a blessing for me as I studied. If you need anything, please reach out. I love you. Take care.